It's Real Talk, episode 19, Music Biopics. Which classic film will score the highest? Returning guest reviewer Dominic Smith lends his Michigan perspective to score 8 Mile. Jimmy the Toucan rides in on the storm to share his grade for The Doors. And musician/podcaster Matthew Hackle debuts to talk about his relationship with Walk the Line. Now quick, you only get one shot. Don't miss your chance to like and subscribe before we blow.
Real Talk is powered by Real Digital. If you work for a brand or agency producing content, keep it real by setting up a consultation at www.realdigital.media to see how your next campaign can come in ahead of schedule and under budget.
In 2002, few musical artists had the command of pop culture quite like rapper Eminem, and the pseudo-autobiographical 8 Mile proved this at the box office. Although the film is full of recognizable faces who have had stellar careers since 2002, it also showcases the late Brittany Murphy in one of her most notable roles. Eminem more than holds his own against the rest of the cast, but unfortunately, the character he plays doesn't get to do much more than freestyle and throw hands. That said, what can you expect from a movie that feels like the cinematic equivalent of a hip-hop record, which is focused more on presenting what is instead of what could be? I suppose I wish the filmmakers would have created something that felt as fresh and clever as Eminem's music instead of strictly showcasing 8 Mile in a rather standard way. We're chatting music biopics today, and although you won't hear the name Slim once in 8 Mile, it feels like a direct lift of a time in Eminem's life and showcases how the white rapper earned the respect of his predominantly black neighborhood before conquering the world. I'm very excited to welcome back my dear friend Dominic Smith, who is not only a director, but may or may not have spent some time in the booth himself. Dom, I heard you vomiting in the toilet before you came on, so apologies for slipping you that ipecac. It just felt like, my one shot to make you blow.
No, man, for me, it was more so about getting prepared for this back and forth that we're about to do. Reviewing in the mirror to myself.
I appreciate the intensity and the enthusiasm as always. Again, sorry for slipping you the ip.
So for me, 8 Mile was a massive thing when I was in high school. I was a rapper, and not only was I a rapper and putting together albums with my buddies, but I was also a battle rapper. So we would battle rap during lunch when I was in high school, and it would look like The Shelter, where eventually security guards had to shut down our battle raps. And not that we would ever get aggressive or anything, but it was inciting a riot. And this was before 8 Mile came out. So when 8 Mile came out, everything that I was getting to witness in this film felt like my life. Having Eminem being one of the largest rappers of our time, being 2 hours from where I live, it was too many connections not to be in love with this person and their experience that they were going through, and getting to see something that borderline felt like a biopic of his life.
And when you went to the theater and you saw it in high school, I mean, I remember when we went, spoiler, you and Al, same age, it was like a real event. Did you go multiple times? I believe
8 Mile was essentially Endgame. As far as the theater experience in Michigan, that movie was consistently sold out. Everybody knew, within a week, we all knew every lyric that he rapped in that movie, to the point where it's so ingrained in my mind that I watched it with my wife last night and struggled to just keep my mouth shut.
There's certain tracks from this soundtrack that didn't necessarily connect with me at the time just because I wasn't listening specifically to the soundtrack. There's obviously the main track that comes out of the movie, but there are other tracks from the soundtrack that I've kind of later in life discovered and really enjoy. And now watching it again for the movie, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that's a 8 Mile Road, of course, that comes from 8 Mile. Let's dive right into plot. This is a movie that is kind of, it in some ways feels like a fight movie. It feels almost like a boxing movie or something, where you're building to this big showdown at the end.
It's funny, I watched it last night and I borderline made a disrespectful comparison, but it feels so accurate, which is, my note says, feels like Save the Last Dance, but for lyrical hip hop. just like an outsider doing everything that they can to fit within this culture that essentially isn't made for them on the surface. But what I love about what they did with this plot is that they didn't take it over the top for the entirety of the film. Even in the end of the film, we don't get this thing that a lot of big Hollywood films would do where it's like, he's doing this because he has to win $50,000, which is the exact same amount for like his mom's surgery or whatever. Like, it was nothing like that. The chef's kiss in this film is essentially the level of when you win the Super Bowl and they're like, so what are you going to do after this? And he's like, I got a shift to finish. I'm about to go back to work. And it was so real to me. Like, that was so it just really helped the authenticity of this film. It just landed that plane for me. And I loved, like, a lot of my notes are like, it stays grounded. There's a lot of authenticity in it. The realism really resonates with me. The plot really hits for me through and through, and it's very hard for me to disconnect my personal experience in life to this film, which really helps me land on the number that I land on plot, because it felt like the plot of my life for a very long time.
1 out of 10, what do you give the plot?
I gave the plot an 8.
My 8 was stuck. The 8 is locked in. That brings us to characters and performances. Obviously Eminem is in the movie. He plays Jimmy, aka Rabbit, and I don't know that it would make a lot of sense for us to spend a lot of time talking about his performance, because at the end of the day, he's clearly playing himself. It's kind of very straightforward in terms of what the plot is asking him to do. That said, he is surrounded by an incredible cast of really, really solid actors who are all doing an expert job of presenting characters that actually define the main character, which is what I think great supporting characters are. Let's start with the ladies in his life. So we have Brittany Murphy playing Alex and Kim Basinger playing Stephanie.
I enjoyed Brittany Murphy's performance. I really felt like she was a man, like, and I'm trying not to stereotype, but she was a standard Michigan girl. I knew girls exactly like her when I was growing up who, there's this old saying from a different movie, Players Club, which is, girl, you got to use what you got to get what you want. And she totally drives that home. And I'm saying this in the most respectful way of understanding that just human behavior, like human nature is just like self-preservation. And that's what she's trying to, like, you can really see it in her performance, but also understanding that she believes in this guy, and it's, to me, that's what creates the complexity of what their relationship is, where it's like, man, I believe in you, but I have my own dreams, and I'm doing what I have to make sure that those dreams are achieved as well. But I'm still about to give you these compliments that remind you, like, hey, you that dude. Like, I see it in you. You are that dude. As far as Rabbit's mom, man, it's just, I felt like I still didn't get enough for me to build a solid connection with her character. For me, still kind of felt surface level. I didn't get a lot of explanation. And sure, that's just like on the story side of things. Her performance did deliver what was necessary, but it wasn't enough to make me care any extra about any of the situations.
I think she's only there to further define the circumstance. The character doesn't really need to do much more, and they don't really give her much more to do than that. So I definitely align with what you're saying, that she doesn't have too many redeeming qualities. Even Brittany Murphy, who definitely sort of betrays Rabbit's trust, still supports him, but you don't really see that from his mother. I feel like Brittany Murphy's character is really interesting because as many reasons as we, the audience, have to be upset with her for what she does, we also have all the evidence necessary to kind of support what she's doing. When you look at, because for anybody not familiar, her character Alex isn't really exclusive by any means with Rabbit. They just have a very brief physical connection on a work break. So again, real romantic guy, old rabbit. And you know, there's another character who's really supportive of her, seems quite frankly like a pretty decent guy who's just kind of presented as someone who gets a bad rep despite having good intentions. Whereas Rabbit is really focused, kind of emotionally, you know, I don't want to say unstable, but there's plenty of times in the film where he lashes out, he's extremely violent, and then that all comes back kind of tenfold to haunt him. We got to shout out, I think, Mekhi Phifer, who does a really phenomenal job. I kept hearing like a Mos Def kind of like sort of vibe, especially when he doing his hosting thing. I really love that. A young Anthony Mackie popping up is Papa Doc. And you mentioned earlier Wink, played by Eugene Bird. Michael Shannon pops up, which I had totally forgot he was in it, and he plays Kim Basinger's boyfriend, who is also kind of closer to the same age as him and Rabbit.
From Michael Shannon, I was like, because he's such a talented actor, and one of my favorite films of his where he just really gives a phenomenal performance is this movie called Bug, which really like took me to the next level as far as his performances go. And I'm like, what is this basic ass like one-dimensional experience that he's given us? I was like, y'all don't even realize who y'all had.
I mean, look, this movie, in terms of characters, I think they're all there just to, you know, kind of paint this tapestry for Rabbit. But yeah, one-dimensional is probably a good way to put it. I think Brittany Murphy's character is the only one who has, yeah, more dimensionality to her. But I'm curious, 1 out of 10, what do you give the characters and performances in 8 Mile?
I gave it a 7. I wrote down strongest chemistry for me was Eminem and Mekhi Phifer. I enjoyed seeing that that experience and that growth between them, and also seeing just like again how authentic those friendships reflected in my own life. And like a lot of that stuff just like felt so real to me, even down to the point where Eminem has this blow up with Mekhi Phifer, and it's just like you feel like you always like know what is best for me. You don't know what, and it's just I understand where his frustration is coming from, and even in that moment, I'm like, nah, he right though. He do know what's best for you. Like him pushing you is just it's literally the thing that you need. That's him being the truest friend to you that he can possibly be. And it's taken you some time to realize it. And then when they have that moment in the bathroom where he finally musters up the words to apologize, and he like, bro, don't worry about it. Like I wasn't even tripping about it, because that's what real friendships look like, where it's just like, you know, this person. I'm not about to hold that against. I feel like that dude right now in my life with a number of different friends in my life. And yeah, it was just cool to see their on-screen chemistry. And it was the one that sold the most for me throughout, from beginning to end.
Oh, I think it's clear they had a real connection. I mean, Eminem shouts him out in the song. Their relationship is really, really special and really kind of unique to this movie in terms of, I don't know, I don't want to call it like it's not a buddy movie by any stretch, but you definitely get that vibe, and it feels very, very authentic. Actual storytelling, Dom, we're there now, you know, obviously you have already mentioned how this felt very authentically sort of Michigan in terms of the cold and some of the vibes that it's given off.
You know, through the beginning of hip hop, like one of the rooted things within hip hop is getting someone to feel your upbringing, feel the environment that you came from, hear your story, and feel like they are lyrically standing in the shoes that you were in. And I think from a visual standpoint, they totally replicated that feeling of hip hop. I love that it just looked so gritty. I love a lot of just the handheld moments where it's just like you are meant to feel like you are literally there. There's nothing that is overly stylistic or cinematic about this. It doesn't feel like a movie. It feels borderline like a documentary. It's not overly lit, you know, like they use a lot of just like whatever the light is giving us here.
A lot of holes, yeah.
Yep, man. Just the environment and the way that they build out the atmosphere of what Detroit is and what it looks like at that time. Nothing is overly beautified. And it is exactly what it is. Like, if you are from that area, you watch this movie and it's like, this is Detroit.
We never really leave. Like, we never leave the block. We never leave, and it's kind of, it would be really easy at the end of the movie to take us somewhere else to see it, but it really does stay there, and it feels true to that moment you mentioned earlier at the end where it's like, we just got to go back to work. I'm curious then, again, 1 out of 10, what would you give it?
There's two moments that ever since I was a kid, they still stand out to me. Bro, even the like how you, because you connected it to a boxing match, and they absolutely even have that moment where it's the standoff with Papa Doc and B Rabbit, and they're face to face. Future's right there, kind of just like commentating, and we got to pull out to just show them just like they're about to box. And we have the music going, doom, 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 and then we cut to the audience, and it's just like a few people, and they're just bobbing their heads all together in unison, and it's just like, bro, that's exactly what that environment is, and you feel it in that moment. And we cut to this wide shot, and M is still looking at him, and he turns to the audience. Everybody from the 3-1, and like everybody is just like together, and it's just those moments create a level of energy that is just hard to harness, and they just capture that in a matter of like 30 seconds. Yeah, man. You know what? I was landing on like an 8 out of 10, but after I just re-described what I gave to you, 10 out of 10 for me. 10 out of 10 for me for everything that I said.
Well, it's locked in now. There's no changing it from here, Arno, right? And I have a feeling that no one's going to be offended, especially from the 313 if they hear that. Use of sound is what we're up against next year, and I wanna I wanna just preface it by saying, I mean, clearly this show is about music biopics. This is a movie about music, but it is not really at any point obviously a musical, but it is kind of the hip hop equivalent of a musical.
You stole it from me. I was like, man, one of the cool things was, and I never put it together until last night, was, yeah, it feels like a musical. Like, it feels like a gritty urban musical, and it's not even a lot. Like, honestly, I could have stood to have one more just like breakout moment in between, because we get our opening, we go through like M choking, and we get a few freestyles like in that time space, but then like we go maybe 30 minutes without really hearing any musical experience again until M is he's in the parking lot. He's in the parking lot, and like we get to, yeah, and we get to hear him spit bars for the first time. Just because of his lyrical prowess, like I would have loved to have just one more small thing in there at any point, but I loved how these musical moments would happen, especially when M is at work and they're in front of the food truck, and then they just kind of break out in freestyle. That was the moment where I realized, I was like, damn, this low key feel like a musical. But also growing up where I grew up, that shit is so normal. Like, bro, it's so normal. When I was young, like you would just like go, like it's the equivalent of Motown days where it would just be a group of guys on the corner and they're harmonizing and just singing and people were dropping coins. My version of would be growing up, and it'd be a group of dudes at the bus stop waiting for the bus, and my homie Barry would break out and beatbox, and we would just start throwing bars out there for like 15 to 20 minutes. And it's such a very unique culture. You know, like they use tracks from like Mobb Deep and like B.I.G. As like some of our battle beats and stuff. So to get to experience that, another thing I pointed out was like, even in the battle sequences where we would have moments where like M is battling at the end, and we have these moments where somebody yelled, like one of the dudes from the free world would like jump in, I'ma fuck you up. It's on beat. Every little like comment that's thrown out is also on beat, and they give us that moment of break so we can get that line of dialogue, and now the lyrics are jumping back in. And I thought that was because I'm a big, even from an editor, I'm a very much so on beat person. Like I love to cut to the beat. And those are just moments that make my heart shine because it doesn't feel awkward. It doesn't feel jarring. It is a part of the pacing and the flow of the movie.
No, it's very immersive, and you really feel whether you're in the basement, you feel like you're there. Whether you're at the factory, you feel like you're there. And I do really agree with your point that I feel like it could maybe use one more musical sequence. It feels smooth to say that, but and I would even suggest that maybe that could have even come from like you see Wink in the studio producing something for Papa Doc to just try and establish him as more of a threat. Maybe see that he's somewhere Rabbit could be if Rabbit can beat him. So I think even early in the movie, again, I don't think Mackie is going to give the same performance as M might give if they're just spinning a little bit, but I do think that in the right circumstances, especially in a booth with a beat, you could have gotten more of an idea of what those guys are capable of, which maybe would have rounded stuff out more. Regardless, use of sound. What'd you give it 1 out of 10?
10 out of 10, man. I gave it 10 out of 10.
I had a feeling. With visual storytelling at 10, I'm like, hey, how does he not give use of sound a 10 out of a 10? If he gave visual storytelling. That brings us to theme. What were your thoughts? And you've done a look. I just got to say, you've done an amazing job throughout this entire conversation of really talking about how this resonated with you personally. So I feel like in a way you've kind of already talked a lot about the themes and benefits from you. Because I usually ask like what themes resonated with you, but you've done a really good job of that. So I'm just curious, maybe if you had to identify one thing that you really feel like the movie is about, what would you say that is, and then what grade would you give it?
Trying to belong into a world that you don't quite fit in. Like on the surface, it isn't a world that was built for you. And what's interesting is like, and here's the thing, is like I grew up in white culture because I live in America and most of the things I would see on TV are full white cast, So eventually I was forced to like empathize for a character that doesn't look like me. So in this situation, it's a very unique experience that he is surrounded by people who look like me, and I am still empathizing for him because I also know what it feels like to feel like an outsider. So it's like, yeah, I know all of this experience. And not only that, I just think that they do a phenomenal job at reiterating what that experience is like at every turn. Even the very beginning where M is in the bathroom throwing up and he's trying to get back into the club and his bouncer's like, nah, son, nah, I ain't never seen you before, son. Like, what are you? And it takes for a black man to come, like almost like a black savior, to come in and yeah, nah, man, he cool. He with us, he cool. After M has his night in the parking lot, and this is like where we're getting to like, all right, we hear these bars, we get it. Boy is solid. He just needs to get out of his shell. And he goes home, and he goes home maybe the next day, and his mom is in there and she's watching a movie. And I don't know if you caught it or not, but she's watching this movie called Imitation of Life. Imitation of Life was made in like the 1930s. It was remade in 1959. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. And it is about a black woman who has she has a baby with a white man. And again, the movie is made in 1959, but it's set in like early 1950s. So like this is like in a very divided country still. And so she has a daughter who can pass as white. And the entire movie is about her daughter growing up and being in these spaces where she's trying to pass as white, but her mom keeps showing up and messing stuff up for her at every single level. And it's so interesting that his mom is watching this and it's flipped complete. I was like, this is genius. Like, this is like, it's a very subtle moment. Even the line of dialogue, and I wish I would have taken a note of because I remember hearing it and I'm like, even what this girl just said as Eminem is walking through the door is very prevalent to the moment that we are experiencing right now. So I think that they sell that theme through and through this movie when you really take time to break down different moments of his experience.
Yeah, wow, what a whole nother level that injects into it, of this sort of tragic irony of this, woman who's just either drunk or high, passively watching a movie that what she needs to see, but yeah, and missing it probably. But no, that's amazing. Well, then theme 1 out of 10. What are we giving it, Dom?
And 10 out of 10. Honestly, I was already at 9 out of 10, and when that moment happened, and honestly, she was actually truly receiving it. She comes in or he comes in, and she's like kind of tearing up at a very hard moment in that movie, where, and just like very briefly, the mom shows up at the daughter's school, and all of the kids now realize she's not white, she's black because she has a black mom, and she runs out of the school bawling, crying, and she's just like, "Why do you always have to do this to me?" And Eminem is about to walk into the house and have a very similar experience with his mom.
That's amazing. I feel like we got to do another bonus episode. You walk like those two movies and compare them. But we have the full score now, locked in for 8 Mile from you, Dom. We've got the plot, you gave an 8. The characters and performances, a 7. The visual storytelling, you bumped it up. I think you originally had it at an 8. It's locked in as a 10. Use of sound a 10. Theme a 10. That gives you a total of 90 out of 100. I would hope M would be pretty happy with that. What do you want to give it? Is this an A plus, just an A? Anything above an 80 here is an A.
Yeah,
But this is
no,
definitely A plus territory if you designate it as such.
No, I'll give it an A. I'll give it an A. There's very small room for improvement, but even that is room for improvement. I like, yeah, my rapid fire like list of notes is only one, and it is, I hated the fight scene when Cheddar Bob gets shot. Like, I never realized how horrible of like just the choreography and like Public in it, where it's just like real street fights are very terrible and just all over the place. Like, nobody's really a solid fighter, but even just like some of the swings, you can see they weren't really connecting. And those, like, that was one of the only moments where I was just like, y'all could have worked a little harder on this. Like, maybe the editor could have cut a little sooner at certain moments.
Yeah, there was a little bit of distance between some of those shots, but hey, no actors were harmed in the filming of 8 Mile. I think we know that, except maybe somebody who takes a back bump on the hood of a car. But
And I'm not trying to like keep myself from ever getting able to direct Anthony Mackie, but
he is an avid listener of the show, Don.
his role was it was so much of a standout role that I was never able to never see Papa Doc in anything. Everything I would see him in, I'm like, motherfucking Papa Doc. Your real name's Clarence, bro. Like, you ain't about this life. You are not an Avenger. Your parents, you grew up with both parents. Like,
so needless to say, you were not a fan of the new Captain America because you think he's a fake.
yeah, man. Yeah, he ain't about that life. I think Anthony Mack is a solid actor. So much of a solid actor that, like, he's Papa Doc for the rest of his life.
Could escape the role. Yeah, he's a victim of his own papadockery. Yeah, no, this is some breaking news here on Real Talk. Dominic Smith is confirmed. He thinks Steve Rogers is more Hood than Falcon because of the curse of Papa Doc. Clip that off. You obviously love this film. That's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on. To your 8, I gave the plot a 7.5. So almost right there with you. Nothing even really notable to point out. I think we kind of cover all the bases. Characters and performances, I actually gave it an 8 to your 7. I think anybody who watches this probably have a similar feeling that I did, which is, maybe Eminem could have started acting if he wanted to. Maybe not. Who knows? Who knows? But the reality is, I think he gives a really great performance as well as everybody else. And safe to say that Rabbit is pretty firmly interwoven into cinema history. I think for as long as we're watching movies, 8 Mile is going to be a part of the discussion. Visual storytelling, I gave the movie a 6. For me, I felt like it was doing what it needed to do. It didn't really kind of attempt to do anything more than that. I'm not saying a movie has to be overly ambitious or anything like that. But to me, a 5 is where you start. I thought the movie was better than average, so I gave it a 6. Use of sound, I gave it a 10 to your 10. Theme, I gave it an 8 to your 10. But my rule is always for a film to get a 10 out of 10, it has to excel. It has to itself be an example of what the movie is about. And although in many ways I do feel like 8 Mile comes close, it is still very much a biopic regardless. I thought it was great. I gave it an 8 out of 10. That brought me to a 79 to your 90. I gave the movie a B plus to your A. So it doesn't seem like we're too far off. Maybe if I came up in Michigan, I would be bumping it up a bit. But for me, it was really solid, I think it's a really good movie to check out. I think anybody, especially people our age, probably already seen it. But if they haven't, I think they'd really, really enjoy it. I think people who are a little bit older, if they wanted to kind of get more of an understanding of hip hop culture, especially from that time period, this is a great time capsule for it. And again, I think younger listeners who might not be familiar with it, I think it's a great piece of the pie if you're getting introduced to Eminem. Listen to a couple albums, watch this movie, and I think you get a really great example of who this guy is. Dom, I think in the last few episodes we've gotten a pretty good example of who you are. At least I'd like to think so. I'm really glad that you came once again. I'm curious, would you mind returning to the jungle perhaps in the future to watch another movie with me? You do such a good job. Like Mackie, you're a victim of your own success.
Nah, man, I would love to. I would absolutely love to. I thoroughly enjoy being able to break down a film to this level, just because it allows me to understand what I appreciate, what I don't appreciate, because I don't really get to have this level of conversation with people after I watch it. I digest it in the way that I do. I receive it however I receive it, but I don't sit down and take notes like homework. And this was a very solid way for me to appropriately show appreciation to something that I enjoyed.
You put that very eloquently. And for listeners, we'll peel back the curtain. Dom and Al may or may not have met in film school, and this sort of discussion is something you get a lot in film school, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it is something that I really kind of miss when you're in that window and you get to academically sit in a group and break things down. So I hope for non-film school goers, they can appreciate these conversations, but Dom, I certainly appreciate them just as much as you said that you do. So
yo, Al, so one more thing is I need you to put a link in the description for a specific video that should be tied to this if anybody chooses to watch 8 Mile after this review, which is, you don't have Blu-ray, you don't have DVD or any of that, you can find it on YouTube, and I was going to have it down there, but it is specifically for behind the scenes of how the battle rap went down. And one very interesting thing is that they brought in a bunch of Detroit rappers to just battle with Eminem, but the whole idea behind it was his microphone would be off the whole time. This is just for B-roll, for the audience responses and all of that. And there is a moment where M turns his mic on. You are welcome.
Say no more. It's in the description. Done. The link to that. Say no more. I love it. Dom leaving with a gift for every year. Thank you. Well, until next time, my friend, I can't wait to have you back. And hey, just a reminder, if you're going to tuck your piece, make sure the safety's on, all right?
Platinum Plastic isn't just a proud sponsor of Real Talk, they're also the home for all our new designs and merchandise. Follow Platinum Plastic on Redbubble to see all our A+ gear. That's Platinum Plastic on Redbubble for all your Real Talk merch.
In 1991, Oliver Stone directed and co-wrote The Doors, a film that is as much about the Doors as W is about the Bush family. But then again, when the doors of perception are cleansed, things will appear as they truly are. I think that means bait and switch if you're a student of William Blake. But the question is, how does The Doors hold up for students of cinema almost 35 years later? Like all of Stone's acclaimed work, there are choices that will leave some shaking their heads while others applaud for brilliance, which makes him the perfect choice to tell a story about the character who was the lead singer of one of rock and roll's most iconic groups. I certainly didn't walk away from Ray or Walk the Line with disdain for the men their films were based on, But the Doors absolutely left me feeling foolish for once admiring Jim Morrison. But is Oliver Stone critiquing the rock star or living vicariously through him? Like a bad trip, you're not sure when or how the film will end, but I was ready to be sobered by the credits with about an hour left in the runtime. But luckily, this colorful portrait of self-delusion that leads to self-destruction is full of great performances, S-tier production craft, and a stellar soundtrack that delivers what you're paying for. The true Lizard King, the Sky Shaman himself, Jimmy the Ducan. Jimmy, I ate some bad cheese, watched Pocahontas, and may or may not have written us an album, buddy.
Jimmy's back, baby. Jimmy is back. Tell me about the album.
It's weird, man. It's out there. It's just kind of about everything. It's really me just kind of meandering for maybe like 2 hours and 20 minutes. But no, but it's good. It's good. It's gonna do.
I'll listen to that.
It's gonna do numbers. I think you're gonna dig it. I think you're gonna dig it, baby. But enough about me. Enough about the album. Welcome back, Jimmy. I'm so glad to have you back to the Jungle Studio here. I just want a little bit of a primer. When was the first time you saw this Oliver Stone classic?
I saw this movie on tape in the early 90s. I distinctly remember this being a very different movie when I saw it as a teenager in the 90s. I love the music of this band. And in the very early 90s, maybe late 80s, I had a tape of the best of the Doors. And instead of playing ball with my friends on the recess, I would just hang out and I would just listen to this Doors tape. I think I still have this tape. It's all cracked and ropey and broken, but I've had that. I really love the music of this band. But I started with saying, I remember this being a very different movie as an impressionable teenager. It's really transportive kind of music where it takes you somewhere in a deep and mysterious, dark, emotional place.
This film really succeeds at sort of, riding that line of creating visuals that are really appropriate but new. And I found that really fascinating. And I want to make it clear to the listeners, there's a few decades between us, our ages, Jimmy and I. I too had an experience when I was young, finding a Best of the Doors album and listening to it and really just appreciating it, enjoying it as a young lion, just for the sound, and then always going back to it and finding something more, something else in it. Let's talk about the plot of the Doors. Let's get into it. It's a very visual story. At some points, you feel like you're almost watching a music video instead of a feature film. This movie is sort of told at some points like a trip, not a road trip. I kept thinking a lot about the film Goodfellas while I watched this for a couple different reasons. One, because I think a lot of people who watch Goodfellas might walk away from it admiring Henry Hill, kind of looking up to the mafia in the same way somebody who watches this when you're younger might see the glorification of the rock star lifestyle. Whereas when you watch it as you get a little bit older, I don't know, you can kind of see it through a different lens. It sounds like maybe you were touching on that when you described it.
I saw this as a very different movie, having watched it recently, and my memories of it are tainted by this belief in the power of the mythology of rock and roll and this rock and roll saint. This film is portrayed by Oliver Stone as a biographical piece of history. The history of this band imbued in the 1960s rock and roll scene. I'm going to be honest and tell you that I did not like this movie as much as I did when I was a kid, because I've met these kind of characters in the travels in the adventure of my life, and there's this presentation of this really creative artist who is seemingly constantly on this addict search for drugs and drink and adventure, and it's less and less about music and more a portrait of a guy who is a full blast addict. And he's not an enigma, he's an addict that has power. And if you look at how this guy treated everybody around him, he's not a hero. He's he's a booze hound and drug addict. And and he does this for the entertainment purposes for all of the people to like from way below him look up to him. And that's what I did as a child, as a teenager.
Listen, here's a guy who's preaching the sort of limits of the human experience, and he spent his entire adult life running from it. He's horrified to have human moments. He's horrified to talk to people, to connect with them, to be sober, to be real. And yet he again presents himself, and I do believe fell in love and truly believed the character that he created. There's this great scene, maybe we talk about it more in characters' performances, but it's revealed that like this story he's told about his parents dying, which we in the beginning of the film see him witnessing, so we kind of know he's making it up, but it's confirmed. He tells everybody his parents have been dead for years. His parents are both alive and working and well. This character that he's created, I think a lot of the plot is about him getting lost in it because he just doesn't have a sense of identity. And now he becomes addicted to the rock star, being out in front of the crowd and everything that comes with that. Someone who works in production. And obviously, as you noted, is somebody who's crossed paths with a lot of people who kind of have the privilege to be victims of their own success. There's always teams and teams of people who are just constantly dealing with that in the forms of physical abuse, sexual abuse. I mean, it really, nothing's off limits for this guy. It's kind of scary to think that how many young people would obviously see this and be kind of inspired to behave similarly.
There is this dynamic link between this larger myth where of a world where addiction and creativity are linked. And it's proof, ultimately, of his death at 27 of what addiction takes away. And this is a story that reminds us of what we call inspiration through intoxication is just an illusion. For a character to be rambling incoherently, this poetry and this hurricane of mess, right? Hurricane of blood. The plot is as incoherent as his poetry. In discussing the plot with you, removing the characters and performances, and these things when we talk about it and they blend together. I do have a score for you.
For plot.
I do. Jimmy has a score for plot.
Al wants to hear it.
Jimmy gave it a 6.
Jimmy gave it a 6. Wow, Jimmy, I'm fascinated to hear that. But again, your credibility in check as a critic, because I tend to agree where there's a lot of interesting things happening, but I think you use the word a few times, incoherent, and I think that's a really appropriate way to describe this. Let's get into characters and performances then, because one of the things that I really appreciate that this film does, and that I hope people would take away watching it, is it reminds you that Morrison really is only a quarter of the act. So much of the sound of the Doors, the heart, even the lyrics don't come from him. Some of the most iconic lyrics, are written by other members of the band. And when you talk about him being consumed by his demons and what that ultimately robbed him of instead of what that gave him, I think that thesis statement is echoed in the remaining members of the band who, we see that all the time. We see that, in Nirvana, we see that in the Beatles. You see that it's like while it's happening for a brief time, somebody can be perceived as, oh, this is but it does take a village, to make these great productions and these great albums.
Great actors. Kai McLachlan as Ray Manzarek, so cool. Frank Whaley as Robbie Krieger. And it looks like they're playing these instruments.
Oh, they're so, you would never, ever believe for a second that they're not,
You're right. Meg Ryan, this, supporting cast, really tight. There's a couple really great characters. Young Michael Madsen, like really young Michael Madsen. How about Crispin Glover playing Andy Warhol?
Yes.
I love that scene so much. Here is the red telephone is ringing. It's God. What do you want to say to him? And of course, that whole world of Andy Warhol's, the atmosphere of that is just so wonderful. I think I think what we should really take note of if we're going to discuss the characters and performances really is the transformation that Val Kilmer undergoes to become this mythic beast. And there, I think a testament to his talent and hard work is when we see him singing, he's singing these songs. That's him singing them. There's a kind of phoniness that he brings to the sort of drunken, clown in some of these moments where he's like very posturing and posy. And Jimmy's wife had a comment about how he's kind of doing Zoolander a little bit. And I was like, I almost guarantee Ben Stiller was watching this going, oh, this is what Zoolander should be doing, because he is like purposefully artificial, like a copy of an imitation of what he thinks the myth is and what he wants to present to us in the world. Oliver Stone plays the film professor when young Jim is making these poetic movies.
And he just rips him. I love that he's just like, what does he say? He says something just like, oh, I don't know. He just makes a comment about like,
Pretty pretentious there, Jim. Not easy to follow, a little incoherent, but dancing bears, Nazism, masturbation. What's next? What do you guys think?
that's spot on for film school. That's some feedback for you. Yeah. Yeah, I thought was really interesting, by the way, about Val Kilmer's performance is you get these sort of, it's like 3 acts, you get that young film school, if you will, pre-rock star.
Yeah.
Then you get the rock star. Then you get the like fat Elvis, Jim Morrison, like in the end. And it was almost like Raging Bull-esque in that you sort of see this like complete physical transformation of the character at one point.
He transforms. And there are some the on stage scenes with the leather and the band playing, and it's like, oh man, we know these songs and sing along to these songs. And I don't know I never saw that band live. Hardly anybody did, so it's like the closest we can get to, witnessing such a phenomenon. And I like being in the camera right up there on the stage with him. And there's some stuff where there's like dancing Indians that are after him, and some, there's some like trippy, druggy kind of stuff that he plays. He plays it really cool, and he's a good singer. He's a good performer, and I don't see him as imitating what he thinks Jim Morrison was, or they didn't meet or anything like that. So, he's playing and being directed to, posture as the myth of Jim Morrison.
The character of Jim Morrison, not the person Jim Morrison.
Yes.
Yeah. Or it becomes that. I would argue that early on he is playing the person of Jim Morrison. And you can very clearly kind of see that distinction. I really want to talk about visual storytelling with you, Jimmy. So I got to get a score out of you for characters and performances. 1 out of 10. He's one of the riders of the storm himself, or riders on the storm himself.
Oh, yeah.
We'll clip that off for use of sound. Visual storytelling, Jimmy, I just have one kind of note because how could you not talk about it? I think this will forever go down as just a legendary film for recreating these concert sequences.
Yes.
I mean, this is 1991, so obviously they're filming in 1990. I mean, this is way before anybody's using any type of CGI. I think it's 2002 or 3 when Lord of the Rings is starting to introduce these sort of CGI crowd shots, maybe a little bit in Gladiator you might have had, but that's still a decade later. So much of the authenticity from this movie, and I have to believe the actors' performances were enhanced so much by the fact they were performing in front of thousands and thousands of people at times. Unbelievable.
Robert Richardson shot this movie, and he has a visual style where one thing I think is really interesting is that he blends together different film stocks and lights for them specifically. He recreates real footage that was from news footage and stuff. There's a scene where the Doors, the members of the band are introducing themselves on black and white, like 16 millimeter news footage, and they recreate that was a real thing, where it was Ray Manzarek who gives his whole name and title and I think his like social security number or his rank or something. Like it was a real, he does a lot of handheld, Robert Richardson. He does a lot of like gratuitous, like canted angles. It's a very much a 90s movie. And in turn, another one of his works that's a really 90s movie that utilizes the same style with Oliver Stone is Natural Born Killers, which again pushes that envelope of using the technology and pushing hard at the edges of the film and of the tools to really come up with a very specific look that as we look back is so very 90s. And there are several visual effects shots. They're just really poorly done. There are there are moons in nighttime shots and backgrounds that are just silly. The visual effects are poor, but don't really hurt how I've scored it.
I agree, because I gotta say, I don't think they were poor for the time, and I think that, I mean, again, maybe I'm out of line by saying that I was only 5 in 91, so, who am I? But I don't know, I feel like they kind of work for the tone of what it is. It feels a little more like art or something, like an expression that's supposed to be looser. So I feel like, again, and maybe I'll say this a few times, that if Oliver Stone made this movie in 2025, I actually think you could use the same effects and it would still work. I mean, I agree with what you say. It may look crude to a modern eye.
Can we take into account the visual storytelling with the motion picture editing? It is substantial. There are a lot of shots that are weaved together really well, especially in the montages of the actual music, and the story is gaining momentum and picking up, and we already know and love these songs. So I think the editorial process was really, really creative and really effective in its invisibility. So the visual storytelling to me is quite strong.
David Brenner, if I can see that correctly, and then Joe Hushting. I'm a little far away from the other monitor, so forgive me if I'm not reading that quite right. But 2 hours and 20 minutes. I mean, that is a heavy chore for any editor, and this movie never really stops evolving.
Yeah.
But it does sort of just unfurl in the most natural way. And I think, the most straight edge person could watch this and kind of feel like maybe they took something beforehand. All of this works because of the edit. Visual storytelling, Jimbo, 1 out of 10.
Jimmy gives it an 8.
Jimmy gives it an 8. I'm typing on the wrong screen. Locking in the 8, Jimmy. Jimmy Morrison. That brings us to use of sound. I will be honest, I actually found at times the use of the Doors music a little smothering. I thought that sometimes that was just like, oh wow, we're just going right into another track. And I love the way the movie opens, and you're it almost feels like, oh, we're going to hear the music and kind of see how these songs were written and comes together, but it's not really consistent with that. It doesn't keep that. And so at times it does, again, just kind of feel like you're watching really any movie that just has a Doors soundtrack on it. And so sometimes it feels hyper appropriate. Sometimes it just feels like it's crammed in there. But there were times where I was like, man, I almost wish we were just in this space and we're absorbing the environment with Jim, and there wasn't just a Doors song playing.
I do agree with that. I couldn't complain about how many awesome Doors songs are played during this
Right.
of our movie, because I love all their songs, and I very much loved how there is a nod towards the end of his life and career. He did this very spoken word recordings that later on the guys in the band created some music for, and they came out as bootleg albums and stuff. One of my favorite Doors songs is called the Alabama Song, and there's a performance of that which is really special because it's one of their not so popular tunes. All of the greatest hits like make an appearance on this soundtrack. I agree with you where it does, and in that very 90s extreme kind of style, really, dude, just jams them all in there. Given the length of it, it did kind of have an effect on my score for it.
Well, before I get your score, I wanted to play a little game called What's Your Favorite Doors Song? I think you might have just told us that that's right. No, it's okay. But just for those who might just be tuning in and coming back from the bathroom, Jimmy, what's your favorite Doors song?
I'm going to change my answer now, Al. I'm going to call it The Crystal Ship.
Ooh,
Before you sink into unconsciousness.
Oh my God, Jimmy, I got to stop you before we get through. You neither kid. Copyright violations, but that beautiful, Jimmy, beautiful. Like I'm a 5-1 guy, 5-1.
Oh, good song.
Yeah, I love
And
that.
they do have that one in there too. It is quite aggressive. And it's very rocky. I like their more rocky stuff, but I also like their like mystical journey songs.
Yeah.
Like Riders of the Storm.
Oh, Riders of the Storm is beautiful, yeah.
You know, the way that this movie rolls out on the screen. It's a trip, man. It's a trip.
What do you score that trip? 1 out of 10. It's specifically how that trip sounds.
Jimmy gave it a 9.
Jimmy gave Jim a 9. That brings us to theme, Jimmy. Everyone's favorite segment. People love the comment section. Hundreds of comments I get every episode. I love when Jimmy and Al talk about theme. And here we are again.
Say that?
I noted some themes of celebrity privilege, excess, identity, altered reality, self-destruction, and selfishness.
Man versus society thing and man versus self kind of limitation and like linkage. This film promotes and presents a reality that is an illusion. I have never ever seen a concert where the stage is lined with police officers and it's saying something about the times and about the danger, the inherent danger of rock and roll. And as the dominant musical art form in those times, it really does have a dark underside.
I don't know. When I'm listening to you say that, it does sound like there's maybe a framing of him as a bit of a victim. And I'm not saying that he isn't, but he is a victim of himself. I feel like, he does not come from a broken home. He is not presented as being abused or hurt. His band members are extremely responsible and supportive of him, as are all the people in his life. I mean, he really does not have any reason to become this person other than he wants to explore it and he sort of gets lost in it. But I think all the time you see, especially when they're peaking in their popularity and he's peaking in his excess, everyone around him is trying to get him to stop. I feel like, again, he was just self-destructive because he was afraid to look in the mirror, and everyone was trying to get him to look in the mirror and tell him how much he was loved. So I still align with everything you were saying about the themes and what they are. But again, for those maybe unfamiliar with the picture and how it's presenting Jim Morrison, the character, or the man lost in the character, I don't know, that was more of my read on it, that he was just a bit of almost like a child of privilege, and he just kind of got lost in the darkness and the demons of his privilege.
What I thought was a really glaring, really strange moment where we open up with Meg Ryan is like sleeping in bed, and he just climbs inside her house and enters her room. He just met her.
I at that point when I'm watching the movie, I'm wondering how much is this is real. Again, is this something? But I think it is presented as real, and yeah, that's something in 1991, that you get away with, where I think audiences are way too self-aware. They say to be like, "I'm sorry, you followed her home from the beach, climbed into a tree, stuck into her window, gave her a kiss, and then ran off as soon as her quote old man showed up, and then you came back later while he was sleeping in the bed next to her." I'm like, this guy's a dirtbag. Well, Jimmy, what do you give the theme? I know this is audio only, but our assistant Frankie has joined the fray here. She's gonna lock in your theme for you.
John Densmore, the drummer, wrote a book called Riders on the Storm, where he presents his personal account of the going-ons of those particular days. He does criticize the film a lot about its portrayal of several events that did not happen. Many of these the scenes in this that were the most explosive ones, remember, where there's a big fight and he throws the turkey and beats up the turkey.
Oh, of course, yes.
Yeah.
And then his bodyguard still tries to eat the duck. Yeah.
Which I would have too. Jimmy likes duck.
Jimmy's a bit of a cannibal, I think.
Jimmy would have cannibal. Okay.
That's my line, Jimmy. I'm supposed to be eating the duck, but
That's true. Interesting how John Densmore, in his tell-all, discounts and discredits a lot of the more major, emotional, dramatic scenes of this. Many Hollywood stars that you know and love were offered the role of playing Jim Morrison. The members of the band refused to allow Oliver Stone to make that movie for so long. And he just did it anyways, which I thought was kind of a cool thing.
yeah, as long as that studio can buy your music, it doesn't matter who wants it made. Wait, Jimmy, you're burying the lead here. You got to reveal some of the people who were up to play Morrison.
It's a fact that Val Kilmer himself practiced for several months and learned and knew like 50 or 60 of he learned their entire catalog and could sing them, with the band behind him. So
Well, you didn't tell me who got offered the thing, so we gotta tell the listeners who was offered the role. Some notable people: John Travolta was offered the role. U2's Bono.
yes,
Interestingly enough, isn't that fascinating?
Michael Hutchins from NXS.
Ian Astbury of The Cult.
Yeah.
So a lot of musicians. Interesting. They weren't necessarily going. But Val Kilmer, a true rock star in his own right. You might say this is the end. What would you give the theme?
Beautiful friend. I gave the theme a 7.
Frankie, our intern, is here with me, and she's going to help me reveal the score. She walks right in front of the microphone. Thank you, Frankie. Yeah. Jimmy gave the plot a 6, the characters and performances a 9, the visual storytelling an 8, the use of sound a 9, and the theme a 7, for a total of 78.
Wow.
That is a B plus.
Yes.
We want to lock that in, Jimbo.
I can waver a little bit. It's an A movie from the 90s. It's one of Jimmy's favorite movies. Jimmy can't give it a B plus. Let's push it up to an A. An A minus. Let's push it up to an A minus.
The A minus is locked in. It's an adjusted score, so a little bit of an asterisk, but that's okay, Jimmy. You've got a lot of clout here on the show. You can do as you wish.
Well, Al, you made some really good points that have me convinced of my sort of tougher criticisms were needed to be, a little bit lighter.
Let me tell you what I gave the picture. To your 6, I gave the plot a 7, so not far off at all there. Characters and performances. To your 9, I actually gave it a 7.5. I want to note, I thought the performances were phenomenal. It's really more of the characters I take issue with. There's not really a redeemable character to sort of offset the Jim Morrison character. Everybody just kind of feels like they're dealing with him the whole time. And by the end of the picture, I don't know, that was really unsatisfying for me. So 7.5 for characters and performances. Visual storytelling, I gave it a 10 out of 10. I really think that these arena shots, I mean, that's just incredible. And it's not just spectacle. I mean, they're really well shot. It feels like it's concert footage. It's super immersive. There's tons of beautiful shots and imagery. So visual storytelling for me, it was an easy 10. Use of sound, I gave it an 8 to your 9. Finally, for theme, this is always the big one, to your 7. I gave the theme a 10 because here's why. I believe that this movie is an example of what it's about. I genuinely think if you look at, I mean, I don't want, this sounds like a criticism of Val Kilmer, but if you look at his performance and what he achieves, if you look at what I think Oliver Stone was able to do at this point in his career, but he's still not as mature of a filmmaker as he'll become. I think he's experimenting. I think he's doing this. And I think the film does things that are excessive and unnecessary and are indicative of a rock star lifestyle that I have to believe. And I think there's a lot of information out there that supports Oliver Stone was absolutely living at this time. And I think this movie, just as much as it is a biopic about the character of Jim Morrison, the production itself, again, just by virtue of recreating concerts, it is itself this sort of act of, I don't know, gratuitous rock starness for the sake of gratuitous rock starness. So there was an 85 for me to your 78. I graded it an A-. You gave it an A- in the end. So I think we're pretty much agreed on it there. Jimmy, I'm curious, if you watch The Doors in another 20 years, do you think you have a completely different reaction to it?
I will because I'm going to be a different person then. I was a different person as a teenager. You know, when we experience great works of art, we see ourselves in it. We bring ourselves to the table. So, absolutely, I believe I'll see it differently and maybe even score it differently.
Well, I'll book you now. 20 years from now, we'll do The Doors follow-up. Jimmy, if I was going to put a band together, and some would say I have, I've got my 3 pals. We do the show here. I'm so glad that you're a part of my band and you're a part of the show here.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, some might even say Jimmy's the front man of the band. I mean, you're a real rock star, Jim.
Jimmy the rock star.
That's right. We have an awesome merch shop, and now we've released, that's right, a Doors parody shirt. If you've looked at our merch shop by now, you know that Al's got lots of fun parody movie posters, shirts, and designs that you can get on buttons, mouse pads, posters, all sorts of things, including t-shirts, hoodies, hats. We got a new one up there celebrating The Doors. So, yeah, I had to plug that, Jimmy. You know how it is. You know how the game is.
Yeah, I do. Is it a picture of Jimmy the Toucan Morrison?
We got it linked in the description. Everybody should go check it out and buy at least a dozen while supplies last. Jimmy, I love you. I'm so glad you could come through. I hope you'll come back again. As they say in The Doors, last words, out.
Before we jump into the next review, I just wanted to thank you for listening this far, and I ask that you leave a like if you're enjoying the show. And let us know what movies you'd like to hear us score on Real Talk. We're almost certainly on your favorite social media platform, so search Al the Movie Lion wherever you scroll.
The earliest known biographical music film is understood to be A Song to Remember from 1945. It was about the life of Frédéric Chopin. And by 2004, Ray, the film about Ray Charles, earned a global box office of $124 million. 1 year later, director James Mangold dove headfirst into a ring of fire to do seemingly the impossible, and that's capture the incredible life and career of the man in black himself, Mr. Johnny Cash. What Walk the Line does so well is tell the story of a man who lost his best friend as a boy and went looking for love without knowing it. Like too many great performers, Johnny Cash built a family and an audience before developing the ability to care enough for himself to avoid self-destruction. But like all heroes, it was at his lowest point when Cash found his true calling. The picture is full of incredible performances and contains a host of supporting roles that truly achieves exactly what the secondary character should. and that's add dimension to the lead character in a way they themselves cannot. The best example being Ginnifer Goodwin's Vivian, who does for nagging what Cash himself did for Black Suits. The film's title is more than just an appropriate nod to one of Cash's most famous singles. It's a description of a sneaky will they won't they love story that defines Johnny Cash as more than anything, a man who loved June Carter. Walk the Line is a biopic, a love letter to classic country music, and itself a beautiful country song that darn near mended this old lion's broken heart with the palpable chemistry generated by Reese Witherspoon and Joaquin Phoenix. With all that said, I can hear the train a-coming, and I know exactly who it's dropping off. Yes, that's indeed a hitch in my giddy-up, as musician and podcaster Matthew Hackle has just landed around the bend, which is right here. Matthew, welcome, and don't worry, no one will pressure you into getting married on today's show. I promise. You have my word.
Thank you so much, Al, for having me. I'm flattered by the introduction, and I'm really looking forward to talking about this amazing film.
I gotta ask you, I want to know when you saw this movie, and I'd love as a little primer, you're a musician. What's your relationship like with Johnny Cash?
I've seen this film twice in the past week to prepare for this. And then before that, I watched it maybe 4 years ago, before I really considered music as a career, as something I could actually do with my life. And Johnny Cash means a lot to me. He's inspired me a lot. He talks about substance abuse and shows that in this film a lot.
Yeah.
And I've dealt with that in my life. And so that's what my music goes over. And it's something that I'm always willing to talk about because I believe I can help people by talking about it. So the film really struck a chord with me, if you will, from an early start. And then, you know, as I progressed and watched it more and more, I picked up the nuances of this film, like the way the sound collides with music. And it makes me smile even thinking about it. And I'm looking forward to diving deeper in it with you.
I mean, as a film, Walk the Line really has so much going for it. I mean, this seems like blasphemy to say, but if you somehow muted this film and watched the whole thing, I actually think you could probably take quite a bit away from it from a story perspective and even just enjoying the visuals. Not that I would recommend anybody do that, but it is itself a great film. James Mangold, a classic director. Let's dive into plot first. This movie has sort of a lot of weight on its shoulders because it has a lot of story to tell. How do you feel that it does in terms of the overall arc, but what it sort of chooses to share about Johnny Cash's story?
I think it's really cool that it starts at Folsom Prison and then backtracks all the way to childhood to show how he got there, how he made it as a star, the pain that he experienced to propel him to a position like that. And then it ends with Folsom Prison. And I love that circle. I think it's a complete thought. A little gripe I have with it is it does skip a lot of gaps. It kind of rushes as the movie goes on. It just gets a little too compressed towards the end there.
I really hate when it could be a music biopic, any biopic, when before we go to the credits, you get like a couple paragraphs. Yeah. You know, it's such a trope. I mean, it might sound even ridiculous to complain about, but I don't know, there's just so many times I see a movie. Recently, I saw The Smashing Machine, and I was like blown away. You get to the end of that movie, in the paragraph, I'm like, now that's an ending to a movie. I wish I could have seen that instead of just read it. And I wouldn't say like Walk the Line commits that much of an atrocity, and I actually appreciated more maybe than ever on this viewing of what it's really kind of doing in terms of a plot, because as much as you might think going in, this is clearly a movie about Johnny Cash's life, it really is just sort of the story about who he is as a man. But the way the plot plays out, I mean, the ending of the movie is the third act is all built around June Carter finally agreeing to marry him. And after that, I mean, it's only a few minutes before you get to the credits. And visually, you don't really leave that place. Really like the time we spend there and how that looks. But I mean, again, in terms of a plot, it's riveting. But yeah, I would imagine as a fan of Johnny Cash, if of course, if you read the novel that this is based on, you might come away wishing there was a little more meat. But again, with a runtime of 2 hours and 16 minutes, it's certainly not a short film.
It could be the best music biopic, honestly. I don't know if you've seen The Beach Boys. I forget the name of that one, but
I have with
that one's really good too.
John Cusack, right? Who plays
Love and Mercy, and it's got
Yeah.
Yo, you were right.
The man himself, he'll sneak in there. He'll sneak up on you, that Cusack.
As a music biopic, it did a really good job. I love the plot. I love the way it starts. And I think that Reese Witherspoon does a really good job of progressing this movie, though, as you mentioned.
I mean, she's so easy to fall in love with. And it's funny because a lot of times I think a female lead is burdened with that. And we don't really talk about it, how if the male lead is going to fall in love, like we, the audience, kind of have to fall in love. And she's just like, I'm like, I don't know who couldn't fall in love. She's just so charming and like hipper, but like holds it down and is strong. And one thing that's really interesting is she catches so much heat in this movie. Everyone's mad at her. And it's just, she just keeps smiling. And it's like, I'm taking anything away from Johnny Cash, but like she is so strong. Like she is by far the strongest character in this movie. And
I love how they portrayed her as just this resilient being in the whole arc. And despite Johnny Cash's charm, she fights it for so long until, of course, that night in the hotel room. But no, she's a powerhouse in this.
You don't propose to a lady who's with 8 stinky men on a bus. Like I'm like, yeah, she's just always this little lady who's just got to deal with all these big drunk dudes, and she's just holding it down and keeping them in line. And the last thing I just kind of want to say about the plot before we move on, and I want to get your response to it, is I love that this isn't a biopic that really, it's not afraid to paint Johnny Cash at times in a really bad light. And I think that makes him such an interesting character. And a lot of times in historical dramas, I don't know, especially for people who are recently deceased or even sometimes still alive, it just becomes a vanity project or a celebration of them. And I think what makes this film so good and this plot so interesting is we really do see him sort of down at the bottom and losing everything, and they don't really hold back and kind of showing the real kind of lows that he hits. And I really appreciate that about the film.
I think that's a fantastic point. He's a dick to his family, his wife specifically. He's drunk around his kids. They feel unsafe around him for most of the movie. You got to wonder like how his family or the estate took this pitch when they bring it to them, or what they signed off on to see him in a negative light. But I mean, he redeemed himself for sure with that last like Johnny Cash 4 album, The Man Comes Around.
Oh yeah.
I wish they touched on that in this movie at the end, like with the song Hurt.
No, I think that could have been really cool. Maybe even to see Joaquin playing an older Johnny Cash as like the credits roll over, like that song or something. I think that, because again, he passes away 4 months after June Carter. So I mean, maybe there's even a whole nother film in that 4 months with just, you know, what that character looks like. Let us know in the comments if you want to see Walk the Line 2 and Joaquin Phoenix. We already got the Joker 2, which I don't know if anybody asked for, but I got to get a score out of you. At 1 out of 10, what would you give the plot for Walk the Line?
Let's go 6.5. 6.5 because I felt rushed. And even though it was powerful to me, I wish there was more.
Hey, that's totally fair. I will say we are now in characters and performances, which I'm teasing. I'm going to tease now because you mentioned it earlier, Hurt, which there's a game we're going to play, and we're going to play it as soon as I get a score out of you for this. But obviously we'll talk a little bit first, but I'm just teasing the game that we're going to play, Matthew. The characters and performances in this movie, I mentioned in my open, the supporting characters are pretty incredible, but it would be nuts to not just dive right into the man himself, Joaquin Phoenix playing Johnny Cash, and of course singing himself, and you know, kind of redoing all of the music and finding a way, not only with his speech pattern, to bring this character to life, but also singing and bringing the character to life. And
you see how sad and how much pain Johnny went through in his eyes. I'm sure he channeled that despair and sadness that he's experienced with River.
It's hard, not to think about it when you know it, because their stories do parallel so much, and they were close. And I mean, there's plenty of interviews out there of Joaquin talking about it and talking about how much his older brother meant to him. And we didn't touch on it in the plot. For those who maybe haven't seen the film, Johnny Cash did lose his brother when he was young, and it really kind of soured his relationship with his father, which kind of becomes the cornerstone for a lot of his addiction and sort of a lot of the love he's missing, and he can't really find with the music. He loves the music, he's clearly passionate about it, but he's missing something. Joaquin creates, again, a version of Johnny Cash. It's almost like a drawing that someone does in a comic book where you're looking at a stylized version of this man, and he's able to bring it to life. And when he's singing, he's also acting. It's not just somebody like trying to hit his marks and trying to do karaoke. When they look at each other, when they're singing, I mean, like, I feel things. Like,
There's
it is
love.
incredible.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Totally.
Sorry to imagine that as the lady from Legally Blonde. Just like a ditzy, dumb kind of blonde. And then, I mean, she's beautiful in this. Her eyes play so much of the acting. Yeah, like you said, yeah, I get drawn in. I feel less alone just watching her act. I feel like she's this warm, radiating presence. Of course, Johnny would, listen to her as a kid. And then, I mean, I'm sure Joaquin was even confused during the casting of this and acting. She's a powerhouse. They both give, I would say, 10 out of 10 performances.
Robert Patrick plays Johnny Cash's father. So, for all you Terminator 2 fans out there, what I think is incredible, and it's super subtle, the strength and resiliency of June Carter is, again, kind of what pulls, in the Carter family for that matter. I love the scene where Johnny's dealer has come to give him his supply, and they sort of chase him off with shotguns. And Johnny sees that, and it's sort of the first time I think he really feels loved. And you can see, he doesn't quite smile, but there's just this satisfaction as he sort of leans back into his room. And it's shortly thereafter we see the entire family at the lake house, and Johnny's dad, Ray Cash, is playing with his granddaughters, and he's sort of being stubborn, and John just sort of laughs at it and tells him to keep, and it's subtle, but you see that resiliency that June sort of showed, and how it pays off, and how when you're kind to people and when you show them love, especially when they're in need, they heal, and then they're able to help heal the people who hurt them. And although it's extremely subtle, here's this rock star who's finally got his girl. There's no reason he really needs to keep his poisonous father in the picture, but he does. He is the Christian man he claims to be, and he's forgiven his father, and he's showing him love. And and you even in a moment you see the father sort of realize he can kind of play with the grandkids and tell them a story. And it's really, really subtle, but so much of the movie takes place before we get to see this sort of healed version of Johnny. And I just appreciate that we do actually get kind of an arc. Like there at the end, Ray has this little bit of like the Grinch's heart gets a little bit bigger. And it sounds like the 10 is what I'm locking in. I don't think there's any debate here.
Yeah, no, 10. Please chalk it up. I don't know how they could have done better.
The 10 is in. I teased the game earlier. Here we are. Now, this is not going to be an easy game, Matthew. I appreciate you coming on the show. And you might be a little angry because you might be like, wow, I thought this was a nice, friendly lion. And then he got the claws out. He played this game. So here's what we're going to do. You mentioned a little song earlier called Hurt, Johnny Cash covered by 9 Inch Nails. So what I am going to do is I'm going to name 6 songs, and you have to rank them, but you don't know which song is coming next. And they're all famous covers by famous musicians. So this is, I know it's going to be difficult, but here's what I'll do. I'll be nice, and I'll start with Johnny Cash's Hurt by 9 Inch Nails. So 1 out of 6, where would you rank that without knowing? But that's a good one, so at least you know you can like.
Well, you have tortured me with this game.
Yeah.
So all the songs I've ever heard, this is one of the most painful, but I love painful and I love sad. Do I get one edit, one move?
I'll give you one mulligan.
If I get a mulligan, this is going number 2.
Okay, we're going to put this at number 2. I think that is a good, safe way to do it. And also, I might as well plug right now, everybody should check out Matthew Hackle on Spotify. Give him a follow, and it's Hackl. And great music on there. I love the song Honeybee. I would have never guessed that you like dark songs. It's such a wonderful.
I know. So if you journey around on that album, besides Honeybee, you will hear very sad confession songs of like hard things I've been through. So Honeybee is the little smile, and the pain storm.
Well, copy that. That's the problem. See, I've just been jamming out to Honeybee the whole time. But
Keep jamming. I love that song too.
Well, we do have everything linked in the description, so people should go check it out. But that said, we're in the middle of a very hard game here. Next up, Eric Clapton's cover of Bob Marley's I Shot the Sheriff. Where do you rank that? 1 out of 6.
Oh gosh.
I know. I told you. I'm no honeybee.
I wish I had a word bank. Let's go. This is a fantastic song as well. I'll go 4.
Okay.
I'm leaving room. Yeah.
All right, next up, Sinead O'Connor's cover of Nothing Compares to You by Prince.
I'll go 3. I think it's amazing, but I wouldn't rank it above Hurt.
Sure.
And I think it sits nicely in the middle. What else you got for me?
All right, we got 3 left. 3 left. Nirvana's cover of The Man Who Sold the World by David Bowie.
Yeah, I'll go 5 for The Man Who Sold the World. I do respect Nirvana, but I'm not crazy on them.
Fair enough.
And that particular song, and I think it's a 5 for this elite lineup.
Well, it only gets more elite with up next, Whitney Houston, I Will Always Love You, which is a cover of a Dolly Parton song.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's how good of a cover it is, Matthew. That you didn't even know it was a cover. So
yeah, and originally I didn't even know 9 Inch Nails did Hurt. I'm gonna use my mulligan. I'm gonna put Hurt at number 1 and this at number 2. I Will Always Love You.
I think that is a very good use of the
which leaves the unfortunate last song. You just
automatic number 6. I'm updating my numbers here, and yeah, so the unfortunate number 6, may he rest in peace, Jimi Hendrix cover of All Along the Watchtower by Bob Dylan. This is the order. At number 6, Jimi Hendrix, All Along the Watchtower, cover of Bob Dylan. Then we have Nirvana, The Man Who Sold the World, cover of David Bowie. Then we have Eric Clapton, I Shot the Sheriff, cover of Bob Marley. Sinead O'Connor, Nothing Compares to You, cover of the Prince, cover of Prince. Whitney Houston, I Will Always Love You, comes in number 2, which is a cover of Dolly Parton. Excuse me. And then Johnny Cash's Hurt comes in at number 1. And good for you, thematically, a very good choice for the episode.
I sound like a sucker, but that is how I feel. And if I got one more mulligan, I would put All Along the Watchtower at number 2, shifting the rest of them down.
Fair enough. Well, I may or may not make that official because we have to move on. We have to move on to visual storytelling. Which again, this is a really, really good looking movie. It's a period piece. I mean, it has to cover a lot of bases and go a lot of places. And I certainly found a lot of locations very charming, and much like The Doors, which we talk about on this episode with your good buddy Jimmy the Toucan. This film really does a great job of filling up some big venues. There are some nice wide shots of some big venues, and the crowds are totally full. And I don't know, call me old fashioned. I'm always really impressed when I see something like that. But
me too. And like the early on shots of the old fashioned mics in the old fashioned venues, and all the girls yelling and being over animated in that way. But I agree with you. It was fun.
Yeah, the progression of microphones in this movie was really fun to watch.
It's a cool detail.
Yeah, how they kind of update throughout the film, and it's fun to see that. And a lot of fun cars, and of course, classic outfits you're gonna see Johnny Cash in that they bring back. But one thing we don't always talk about when we're talking about visual storytelling is the edit, and I do feel like this is a movie that is paced really, really well. Of the 3 films we're talking about today on this episode, I feel like this film has the best edit. The way that it transitions from song to scene, back to song, and the way it sort of weaves in this narrative of very subtly, there might be a line of dialogue or something, and then you transition to the song that you clearly can kind of see maybe it inspired. It's not too on the nose, but it does it consistently enough where, I don't know, I really appreciated the way it unfolded.
Me too. And specifically, my favorite edit/cut in this movie was when he was a kid to when he was an adult. And
yes,
the first time I saw that, I didn't even notice, because I was like, okay, he's waking up. He just got yelled at by his dad. Oh my gosh, he's old.
Yeah. Yeah, he goes in and he kind of dives on the bed, and he just sort of looks down, and when he comes back up, he's Joaquin. He's
going off to war.
and there's this great moment later in the film, it's somewhere in the second act, where he's in bed and he wakes up and he looks over and he sees his brother, who he shared a bed with when they were boys. And obviously it's where his wife and I believe his son is. But again, just a nice callback.
How about the saw blade at the beginning and the end too?
Yeah, these
Especially with
bookends.
yeah, it's really neat.
Yeah, no, it was used so well. Again, he just sort of gets lost looking at this blade. As again, if you haven't seen the picture, unfortunately, that's how his brother was killed. He had an accident with a saw blade, and yeah, no, the bookend of that is really, really well done. Well, I really want to talk about use of sound. That's like the most important thing we should discuss. So I got to get a grade out of visual storytelling, 1 out of 10.
Let's go 8 here. I think it's beautiful. I think it's really well done. There's a contrast of light and dark throughout the film. They had a very clear mission while making this film, and it didn't deviate much. So I'll go 8.
Well, that brings us to use of sound. I mean, I'm just gonna toss it to you. What did you think?
One of the times I watched this film, I just listened. And that's something I like to do in my pastime while I'm driving or different things like that. Is just train my ear and listen to movies. Like with this, early on in the movie, there's that montage as the pressure builds before he actually chooses to be a musician. And you hear the shoe shining, and that's along the rhythm, and the walking is on rhythm. And then the walking of the prison guards at the beginning is on rhythm. So
yeah.
I love the sound design in this movie and how they play it along, like you said, as a music video or a play. And that's what I paid attention to. I mean, I think they put a lot of detail and paid a lot of attention to detail, specifically with Johnny Cash. I mean, there's no better way to portray him than in that light with the beautiful sounds.
The ear of this musician is present in the film. You as the audience, because again, that's what the main character is. It is the vessel for the audience, and the sound design supports that because we're putting together with him step 1, step 2. This is how he gets it. This is how he figures this out. And then you see the final payoffs, and that progresses and kind of snowballs and is a bit exponential throughout the film. But you're right, at the beginning, you really get to see kind of step by step, like how he's putting these songs together, or at least this one in particular. Again, the sound design in the movie, I think, is really, really strong. You know, it's very immersive. When you're that whole first sort of soft open, when we're leading up to Johnny Cash going to the saw, you just hear the clapping kind of in this booming prison that, you know, you're like, wow, they are ready to rock and roll.
I love it so much.
Yeah. And then when you come back to it later, it's such a great thing to come back to because you're like, oh yeah, these dudes have been waiting the whole time. Like, we've been hanging out here watching a movie, and there's like a whole Folsom prison in there ready to blow the roof off. And when he just saunters out and hits the stage, man, he's just the coolest dude in the world at that.
Yeah, I agree.
Use of sound, 1 out of 10. What do you give it?
I'm going 10. It inspires me a lot as a musician to pay attention to the details because, you know, you might think the average listener doesn't listen for things like this, but I would argue that they do. Specifically, people like us who pay so much attention to movies and the sound in it. It's just 10 out of 10. They paid attention to the details here.
You know, musicals kind of have a leg up on other movies because it's got that combo of like it's maybe a great movie, but it's like a great album you want to listen to. And I think all those details you're talking about, you just notice more and more with a film like this because everything is sort of inspired. That brings us to themes. This movie, I don't know that it's not necessarily overflowing with themes, but the themes that it's exploring, it's really, really traversing deeply. I noted longing. I feel like that's something that's really consistent with a lot of the characters in this movie. There's sort of an arrested state of development. I think a lot of the characters are in for most of the movie, really up until, again, the last 5 or 10 minutes, you finally see the rocket take off. And also just expression, the ability to express yourself, or for some of the characters like Ray Cash, Johnny's dad, not express himself.
Survivor's guilt, this idea of, God, you took the wrong son. And that was really sad to watch. It comes up over and over, especially and particularly when he's around his dad. And you can see that tension rise when they're at that Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah.
So survivor's guilt's a big one that permeates through the entire thing, the entire movie. And then you get like maybe the dark sides of fame, maybe a burden of fame. you see it wear on him, specifically through the drug use that he got introduced to early on in the performing. But he gets worn out. I don't know if it does, but maybe his voice thins out through the movie too. And that might be wearing him down. There's just a lot of little nuances there that Joaquin Phoenix delivers on.
Yeah, I think that for a lot of creators, especially creators that are lucky enough to find a medium that they're passionate about,
Yeah.
when you have an addiction while you're also passionate about something, it could be this really negative spiral because the substance can really start to influence the not just the product but the process is what I'm trying to say. Then it can be really difficult for an artist to separate those two things because both in and of themselves can be consuming. And I think it can be really difficult. I mean, let's face it, it's difficult for anybody to balance a career and anything else. Well, then 1 out of 10 themes. What do we give it, Matthew?
I would say 8 again. I feel like they had pretty much everything ironed out and organized correctly. I mentioned it toward the beginning of this conversation that like I love the use of substances in this film and how they showed his struggle with that. I think the scene where he detoxes is very powerful enough to move anyone who watches, whether or not they struggle with substances. But I as always, I think there's a little room to grow. I feel like they could have tied in a few different things. I don't have anything specific, but I'm going with an 8.
No, I think that's a very fair score. You're going to see we're very close on all of our scores here. And I'll read yours back now. You gave the plot a 6.5, the characters and performances a 10, because that's the only right answer, let's face it.
Yeah.
Visual storytelling, you gave an 8. Use of sound, you also gave a 10. I'm inclined to say again, that's the only right answer. And then themes, you gave an 8, which is a total of 85, which is a solid B. You can go, I'm sorry, it's a solid A. I don't know what I'm talking about. It's a solid A. You could go A minus, A plus, but do you want to lock in an A for Walk the Line?
Please lock me in.
All right, we've got the A locked in. I will reveal now my scores. To your 6.5, I gave the plot an 8.5, so just a little bit better. I really do appreciate. I think there's a little bit of a bait and switch. This is less. I mean, you definitely get a biopic of Johnny Cash, but it's very much a love story. And I think the more you go into it understanding that, I think the more satisfying of a payoff you have. But I do stand by. I just hate seeing a paragraph at the end of it.
Yeah.
8.5 out of 10. Characters and performances, to your 10, I gave it a 10. Visual storytelling, to your 8, I gave it a 9. So just a little bit more there. Use of sound, 10 to your 10. And then theme, very similarly to your 8, I gave it a 9. So to your 85, I gave it a 93. I gave it an A. I think this is a really great film. I think if you don't know who Johnny Cash is, this is a great introduction to him. If you do know who Johnny Cash is, I would be surprised if you really didn't like this movie. And even for the most hardened of cinephiles who hate a musical, I still feel like you can really enjoy this. I really enjoyed chatting about it with you, Matt, and I really appreciate you coming through.
Al, you welcomed me in as a lion. I had my judgments ahead of time, but lions and humans can get along, and I'm really looking forward to the future of this relationship.
Thank you. That's what I'm here to do. I'm really trying to move the boundaries forward for lions everywhere. For too long, people, they come at you with chairs, and all of a sudden you roar, and they're like, this guy, it's like, what do you want me to do? How many times in your day do you have someone putting a chair in your face? Anyway, I digress. That's for another episode. I'll put you on the spot, though. Matthew, you could tell us maybe a couple of your favorite films if you were going to come back. Maybe a Real Talk exclusives for some of the listeners from your show who might be joining us today. What are some of your favorite films?
My favorite of all time is The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. And I would say adjacent to that, Spirited Away. I wouldn't put it in my top 3, but Black Swan is so good.
Oh, Black Swan is phenomenal. We review that this season on the show.
Was it Jimmy the Toucan who flew in for that one, or was it someone else?
Jimmy the Toucan is on that episode. He is talking about Me, Myself, and Irene because this is one of our archetypes episodes, and we're getting into man versus themselves. And so Me, Myself, and Irene. But no, I have the amazing Emily Poley who's going to come on and review Black Swan, she herself is an incredible dancer. We've shot with her before, and so yeah, I was really lucky to chat with her about that. So Black Swan, probably my favorite horror film. If I'm honest, I love Black Swan so much. So I'm glad to hear you say that.
Thanks for asking that question.
Yeah, are you kidding me? Absolutely. And please, if you wouldn't mind letting the Real Talk listeners know, like I said, I have it linked, but where can they listen to you and your amazing podcast on YouTube?
On YouTube, I go by the name of The Real World Exit. That is a podcast where I highlight creatives. It's kind of morphed and changed lately. With that, I say my channel's changing, The Real World Exit. But I'd love for you all to subscribe and check it out. There's some really inspiring stuff on there. My Spotify and everywhere else my music has been released. My album Square One, it's out and about. Check out the song Honeybee. I believe that's the best on it. And there's a music video to go with it.
Love
If
it.
you're in for an introspective journey, check out the other songs there.
No, I can attest. I love the music video for Honeybee, and yeah, it's great. And that's real like REAL, not to be confused with real talk like REEL. So yes,
That is a funny crossover here.
it's a real mistake you might run into here. So I just wanted to make that distinction. But like I said, everything's linked. If you're listening to this on an audio platform, it's still linked. And if you're here on YouTube, then of course just pop in our description because we've got it over there. But Matt, I'm so happy that you came in. This was such a fun chat. And in the meantime, please, stay out of prison.
Stay out of prison. That's awesome. I cannot guarantee that.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks
and
for
here's
listening.
A
And
look
here's a
at
look
the
at the
scoreboard
scoreboard from our
Dominique
show.
Smith graded 8
John
Mile
Pollock
and
scored
90
Home
and an A
Alone
to
a
my
72
79 and
and
B
B
plus
to my
for an overall
64
average
and
of
B minus with an average
84.5
of
and an A
68 and a
Jimmy
B.
the Toucan
Christina
gave the Doors an A
Dobre
minus
scored
and a
The Muppets
78 to my
Christmas
85
Carol
and A minus with an
100 and graded an A
81.5
plus to my
and an A
94
minus
and an A.
average.
So
Finally,
we got an
Matthew
average
Hackle
of
graded Walk the
97
Line
and an A plus, making it the highest scored film on today's show.
highest
On the
graded
other
film
end
on
of the
today's
spectrum,
show with an
Sid
89
scored
average
Jingle All the
and
Way
an
to
A.
20 and
Tell me
an
what you
F
graded each
plus
film in the comments.
to my
I genuinely
46 and
wanna
C
know.
minus.
I'm very
A
grateful
total
to my
of
friend Dominique
33
Smith for
D.
coming by
Closing
again.
out the
And
show
you
with
should
Keisha
subscribe to his
Jackson,
YouTube
scored
channel
Die
if you
Hard
haven't
in
already,
96
as
and
well
an
as
A plus to
subscribe to
my
Platinum
83
Plastic
and
on
an A
Redbubble
with an average
to
of
support Jimmy the Toucan.
89.5 and an A.
And please tell me
You
what
give
you graded
Matthew
each film in the
Hackle
comments.
a
Sub
sub
on
genuinely
Spotify
wanna
to
know.
hear his latest
Big thank you to
releases.
John Pollock.
Join
of
us next
Post
time
Wrestling
on
for
episode
reviewing
20,
Home Alone.
Franchise
I
Foundations
strongly
Part
encourage
2.
you to follow
Sid the
Christina
Cinema Sloth and I
on
will
all
chat
her
Captain
social
America the Winter
platforms.
Soldier.
You can support Sid
Farmer
the Cinema
and
Sloth by
Gafford,
picking up
Charlie
some of his
Harold
merch on our
debuts
show
to
shop.
review
And
Babe
finally, a
2,
huge
Taking
thank
the
you to
City,
writer-director
and
Lakeisha
Avatar, The
Jackson
Way
for
of Water
returning to
VFX
grade Die
coordinator.
Hard. Join us next time on
Abby
episode
White
19,
debuts
Music
to score
Biopics.
Star Wars,
Musician
The
and
Empire
podcaster
Strikes
Matthew
Back.
Hackle
Thanks to the
debuts
team
to
at Real
review
Digital
Walk
for
the
producing
Line.
this
Jimmy the
episode, and
Toucan
Platinum
returns
Plastic
to grade the
supplies all our
Doors,
show's
and my good buddy
merchandise on
director editor
redbubble.com.
Dominique Smith
If you haven't
returns
left a
to
like by
score
now, you
8
might as
Mile.
well. And
Thanks to the team at
subscribe
Real
to the
Digital
channel,
for producing
as
this
well as hit the
episode
bell
of
icon
Platinum
to be
Plastic,
notified
who
when Real
supplies
Talk
all our
drops.
show's merchandise on redbubble.com.
Thanks for listening.
And if you're going to talk by
movies,
now, you might
make
as
sure it's
well.
Real
And
Talk.
subscribe to the channel as well as hit the bell icon to be notified when Real Talk drops. Thanks for listening. And if you're going to talk movies, make sure it's Real Talk.
All right, hold it down. Hold it. Let's ask the filmmaker what he thinks. Bringing me down. Shut up. Mr. Morris?
I quit.